About this time in the role grandparents are playing in the U.S. As childcare gets more and more expensive, younger adults with children are asking for their parents' help, in particular their mom's help, more now than ever before. In fact, a 2022 survey revealed that nearly 60% of grandmothers provided some form of care for their grandkids. But some experts warn that too much responsibility sharing between parents and grandparents could end up hurting their relationships. So for more on this, let's bring in Faith Hill. She's a staff writer at The Atlantic who's covering this trend, and clinical psychologist Dr. Jennifer Hartstein. Thank you both for joining us this morning. Fascinating stuff here, Faith. Let's start with you. You recently wrote this article about how grandparents' roles in their grandkids' lives are changing. Walk us through the takeaways that you have from this research.
Yeah, absolutely. So in recent years, there have been some changes. There are increasing numbers of single parents in the U.S. And of working mothers of young kids. And childcare services just keep getting more and more expensive. But U.S. federal policy still doesn't guarantee paid parental leave or paid sick leave. So parents are just really struggling, and they're turning to their own parents out of necessity.
A lot of that necessity as well. Dr. Hartstein, let's bring you in here. So if parents are in a tough position where they need to ask for the grandparents to help out, maybe even more than once a week, how should they go about having this conversation?
I think this is not a new phenomenon, but it's something that's just so much more in our faces. And some of these conversations are so hard. There's potential shame in having to ask for the help. There's challenge. There's wanting to respect your parents' time and space. And I think in these moments, honesty, Stephen, is the best policy, and we've got to be clear about what our needs are and ask and also respect the boundaries that your parents might have in coming in and helping you out as a grandparent to your child, right? So we have to do some negotiation, have some honest conversation, and see what's possible.
Good advice. Faith, I'm curious, speaking to these grandparents themselves, what is something that maybe surprised you about what they had to say about this?
Yeah, well, I mean, frankly, I was just surprised that grandparents were doing so much in the first place. I think there's kind of a narrative these days about grandparents today not being very involved and kind of, boomers who are off traveling and having a good time. But I think that perception exists because there's just so much need. And so, there's a kind of an idea that grandparents were always very involved throughout history, and that families often all live together and we're kind of around the clock caring for each other. But in fact, that's not the historical norm. And I think people don't realize that.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up. There is sort of like a common understanding that grandparents, especially in the baby boomer generation, are not as involved as they used to be. That conventional wisdom doesn't seem to be panning out from your reporting. And Dr. Hartstein, I'm curious, for these grandparents who are dealing with this, you mentioned the importance of setting boundaries. How can they do that? I know just the grandparents in my own family, it can be difficult to tell your kids and your grandkids no.
It is very hard. And I think that's hard across the board in anything that we get asked to do, especially kind of for grandmothers, right? And I think it's really important for them to be able to say, hey, I can offer you these things, and really maintain that boundary, but do things that they enjoy in those times. Can they spend time with friends? Can they give back to themselves, right? An empty battery is an empty battery. And as we get older, our battery life is shorter. So you have to give back to yourself and do those things. And if you're getting all of the good stuff from being with your grandchildren, great. But if you're not, negotiate that, figure out what you need to do. No is a full sentence, and it is okay to say.
I love that. An important conversation to have, and it's important to actually have the conversations and just assuming the other party knows what you're going through. Faith Hill, Dr. Jen Hartstein, thanks so much for breaking this down for us this morning. Really appreciate it.